Hello everybody and welcome back to Circuit Simon Says for another review. This day I am looking at my Revoslot Alpha GTA, and this is a brilliant little car. This is the first car my wife got me, and yeah, she got me this to run with my Ford Escort, so I'll do a quick side by side of those. But as always, I'm going to compare to the Carrera as well. So first of all, taking a look, yep, I've run it. I've got some rub marks on the bodywork from my fencing and guardrails. That's going to happen if you don't run the full borders. I'm a bit tight on space, but so I have to run the guardrails. That's going to happen, but that's okay. It's part of the history now of my car. It's what makes it yours, is these little dings that they collect on the way as you're driving these things. So Revoslot, these cars come with a die-cast collector's model finish. They are just that well finished and that well detailed from a body point of view. They are absolutely lovely to look at. The paintwork is well polished. All the printed on decals, they're absolutely mint and crisp. There's no blurring of the decals or anything like that. They're supremely well printed, even down to the tiniest little, you can see it right there, that tiniest little alpha badge. Let me bring my thumb in for comparison of size. Look at that, the alpha logo on the front, teeny tiny, looking absolutely amazing. Doesn't have working headlights, but the headlights that they've got on there, they look very, very nice. They look like the originals. On my car though, they don't look quite straight. Driving it around the track's definitely something you don't notice, but and they do look like, they've got the depth there, right? They look like the old classic headlights. Loving the wheels as well. These cars are just beautifully modeled. So yeah, they're, the Carrera cars, let me bring these in for side-by-side comparison. So the Carrera cars are well finished and they do look good. I don't think the camera does it quite the justice, but there is a noticeable difference in, the finish work of the Revoslot versus the Carrera. It does feel like, or it does look like, it's just up one notch more than the Carrera cars. Now, Carrera cars are really, really good, as opposed to, what I started collecting 20 plus years ago. The Carrera cars are fantastic looking cars, and again, the decals on these Carrera cars are well done. If I can get focused in on that, let me bring that in. So you can see the detail on the Carrera. So the Carreras are really well printed. It just feels like the Revoslot, just bring it up a little bit more, maybe in the polish on their body. But yeah, it's really good. Carreras are really good too. This particular Revo is a Group 2 car. These were raced, I believe, late 70s or in the 70s, into the 80s, I think. So they're very small cars usually. I mean, the Ford Escort, in comparison to a modern BMW M4, is a small car. So let's do a quick size comparison. Oops. I can see these Group 2 cars are tiny in comparison. Guide to rear wheel. I mean, it looks like there's at least 1 inch a difference in the length between the guide and the rear wheel. And footprint wise, the Carrera, I mean, if I get them both level, the Carrera is probably close to 1 inch wider too, to be honest. So, the scale cars. That's what they are. These cars are a lot smaller scale-wise. Now, between the Carrera and the Revoslot, one of the obvious differences is in the chassis. The Carrera uses a single-piece molded plastic chassis, and the Revoslot uses a two-piece chassis. The Carrera car retails for around about $55 to $60, and the Revoslot is $89. So let's delve into this, and we'll bring this in as needed to go through the differences. But the Carreras, what they do is it's a single chassis, plastic, everything clips in place. So there's not really much in the way of adjustability in terms of ride height and things like that. It comes with brass bushing bearings, motors. And the value in the Carrera where that really comes in is with their electronics. This car's a digital car, so you've got all of the digital features running multiple cars per lanes, and it comes with lights and the working brake lights. So there's a lot of value in the Carrera digital. So why would you go for a Revoslot? Okay, so Revoslot. First of all, I mean, just the look of the thing. If you are a fan of a car, you're going to buy it anyway, and so if you like these Group 2 cars and you want other Group 2 cars to run with, that's what you'll end up buying, and you'll be looking for these cars. So that's why, I ended up with this one, because it's a beautiful looking car and I wanted something to run with my Ford Escort. So let's have a look at the Revo chassis here. And it just pops off on these posts. So I need to just back off my screws a little bit more. There we go. So Revoslot has a light body. It's not quite as thin or as light as the slotted car bodies, but it's light. It's definitely thinner than the Carrera. And notice that Revoslot on their bodies use these bump stops where they screw and mount the chassis to. Now these are different lengths, and I'll get into why in a little bit, but they're different lengths and they're color coordinated for these lengths. So, and then let's get into the chassis. So I've added a little bit of weight in front of the motor to make it a little less tail happy. But let me bring the camera in a little bit. So this is the Revoslot chassis. This is straight off after running a bunch of laps. So what do you get? Well, the Revoslot out of the box is a two-piece chassis, and there's not, with what you get in the box, there's not a huge amount to the adjustability. When you get these, you do have to adjust the motor mesh. So you adjust that by loosening, you can see these 3 Allen head screws here. I just loosen those. I get a piece of paper, I put it between the 2 cogs, push everything together, and then tighten them up in place. And that sets, if I can get you to focus, that sets a nice mesh. A little bit of play, but not too much. That's really perhaps the most important thing you need to do with a Revoslot, is just make sure that the mesh is set, and then give it some oil on the 1, 2, 3, 4 bearings, little drop on this end of the motor, and a little bit of grease on the pinion and the crown, and you're good to go. And with this car, you can't really adjust the float that it comes with. When by the float, that's the amount the 2 parts of the chassis flex relative to each other. It doesn't come with the additional parts, but this is really now where the Revoslot starts to come in and be different, because all of these parts are aluminium and they're all bolted to the chassis. And Revo, they do a bunch of different optional parts that you can select from. So this is where Revo differs from the classic moulding of the Carrera. The Carrera, you know, you can change tyres, you can change axles and the gearing ratio and things like that, but out of the box, it's a no fuss, no nonsense car with a lot of great value added in with the electronics, and these run very well out of the box. The Revoslot, once you've got the mesh set, this runs really well out of the box. And so if I'm running my Ford Escort with this, they set very similar lap times, both offer a very similar driving experience, and I've got a great competitive car against each other. And that's the way I'm going to run them. However, if you get into club racing, there's the option of buying the different parts, which will allow you to have more float. Maybe I think they offer spacers, so you can then adjust the ride height, and you can change out these different height body posts to raise and lower the body on the chassis. So this is where the Revoslot comes in. It's aluminium and everything is all bolted together, and you can buy a whole bunch of parts to make it do different things, and you can make it do that very, very easily, versus the Carrera. You can't adjust really ride heights. You can grind down tires that will adjust the ride height, but you know, this is a complete driving experience, and I don't think the intent here is to really mess with these too much. So if you're coming from these and then you're coming to a Revoslot, is a Revoslot suitable for a beginner? Depends on where your skill sets are. If you can use a screwdriver, then you can drive a Revoslot. If you can use a hexagonal wrench, you can use a Revoslot. Like I said, the only thing I've done with this is adjust it, make sure my motor mesh is good, and added a little bit of weight to make it a little less tail happy. That's it. You don't have to add this weight. It was just what I did. It pulls the center of the weight of the car further forward a bit rather than hanging so much out of the back. But this is just an adhesive car wheel weight. And this car, actually, they stay in the slot very, very well. I'm not running this at full power. Let's not make any bones about it, the Carrera car with its magnets grips the track harder, gets a much faster lap time. This with no magnets, tail happy. But I've got two cars that run very similar, and they make for good racing. Now, let's compare it against the other Group 2, shall we? So my Alpha versus the Ford Escort, there's maybe 1 or 2 millimeters difference in the length between the wheels. The track of the two cars is pretty much identical, and as expected, because the wheelbase is longer, when you put guide to rear wheels, the Ford Escort, like I say, maybe have 1 millimeter or 2 extra in length. So there's very, very little difference here. Yeah, wonderful cars and very well finished. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to put the body on. Now, different posts, the body just pushes in like so. Oh, let me get that wire out of the way and clip that in. And how I set this is I think of the whole chassis as a seesaw. So I bring these middle ones in so they're, you know, they're not tight, they're just holding the body. They don't need to be mega tight because they're going into these rubberized threads. And then it's the front ones that I hold down a little bit more than the rear ones. And what that allows for is, it allows for where the body comes together. You still get that float in the chassis, but having the front pinched a little bit lower than the middle screws here, that stops the back end from sagging too much and rubbing the tyres. So it's, you know, I've still got the play there, but think of it as a seesaw. And so front end screwed down a little bit. By screwing this and not over tightening these, you still allow for that flow which is designed in the body, in the chassis. And yeah, you don't sink your rear wheels up into your wheel arches, and there you go. So that's how you put these together. And my Ford Escort is no different. It's a seesaw in the middle, and you can adjust the height, and you can adjust how much you're pushing the front in, you can adjust how much you're pushing the back in, and you can fine tune that by switching out those coloured posts that are on the body. You can buy different ones, and you can tune your ride height to perfection. So yes, brilliant little car, love it. And you know, they're just so much fun to drive. So really good cars. I will get this and set up and show you this driving now, but that's it. There won't be a after the track. Okay, thank you very much for watching, and you all have a good week. Bye. Here we are with the Revoslot Alpha, as Circuit Simon says. I'll try and put a couple of half decent laps together for you guys, and yeah, let's just see how this goes. So right now I'm running this car at 60% power, and it seems to be about the right speed for these Revoslots on my track, and it's just a really fun car to drive. It's a little tail waggy. It stays in the slot really well. Of course, I haven't got the full speed turned up, but it's not the point really of this particular car, I don't think. It's a great looking car, and it's a great car to have fun with. I really enjoy driving this and the Ford Escort Revoslot Group 2. And you know, they're a perfect match for each other, really. They're both great driving cars. They look fantastic, and they just offer this really fun driving experience. So yeah, love it. So let's bring it back to the table for some final thoughts after a quick close-up video. All right, I'll bring it back.